Over the last 13-14 months, I've traveled to about 35 countries and almost 100 cities around the world. And as such, I've come up with a list of 3 different areas that I feel are the biggest challenge for a world traveler going to a high number of cities, a high number of countries, either traveling alone, as a couple, or as a group. And so I want to go through each of these 3 and address each challenge and the solutions that I've come up with, which I don't feel are full solutions, and explore these things and describe my thoughts on them. The first biggest challenge is having solid, good sleep. And basically, when I'm traveling, I'm primarily in hostels or couch surfing, so it's very difficult to get a truly excellent good night's sleep. And that's for a number of reasons. Some of those are obvious. If you're in a dormitory, there's other people coming in and out. But even beyond that, if you didn't have other people, let's say you're in a private room, you are still switching environments every few days. So maybe you stay in a city for 3 or 4 days, 5 days. Most of the world travelers that I meet are traveling in this kind of a pattern. They're traveling 3, 4, 5 days in a city, and then they move to the next city. So as you switch to a new location, you're switching your environment that you're sleeping in. The surface of the bed, firm or soft, or a cushion, memory foam. Maybe it's springs, maybe it's sagging, maybe it's lumpy. So the surface changes, the ambient light in the room changes, and that affects how you wake up or how you sleep. If there's street lights coming in through the windows, if the curtains are not very dark, or if it's completely black. All of these things affect how you sleep, and as you change environments, it takes your body days to adjust to your new environment to get solid sleep, and eventually you would be able to sleep in an environment. It may take a week, 2 weeks to adjust to the ambient light, to the noise, street noise, vibrations, all of these kinds of things, and then eventually you would be able to sleep. But then you switch locations and it starts over again. So number 1 challenge is getting a good solid night's sleep. So the way I deal with that and try to maximize my quality of sleep is, number 1, I wear earplugs. Number 2, I either wear a mask over my face, or sometimes I wear a ski cap that I roll down so that it covers my ears and my eyes all the way down to the tip of my nose. So during the winter months, that's what I've been doing as I've been traveling. Those 2 things, I think, are the biggest factors of what you can do on your own to try to control your environment and reduce the amount of sound and the amount of light, and stabilize things and try to give yourself a similar type sleeping situation as much as possible. Okay, item number 2 is diet. As you're traveling, you want to try new foods. It's very tempting to go off your diet. When you taking in a high number of calories, a high number of carbohydrates, and these things which add to body fat, or taking in unhealthy processed foods, or high sugar content. So all of these things get really difficult when you're traveling, primarily because we do a lot of walking and a lot of outdoor activities. So for instance, you may be in Croatia and you're doing 3 or 4 hours of walking around a ruin or a castle or an old city, and maybe it's in the sun and it's just coming down, and it's really draining your energy. And at the end of that, the last thing you want to do is go back to a hostel and prepare a meal in a poorly equipped kitchen to try to make a healthy meal. So what we end up doing is we make an excuse to ourselves, and then we go out and we get something cheap, like a doner kebab, or a Euro sandwich, or a hamburger, or some sort of slice of pizza or something like that, that's very, very quick that you can get and inexpensive. So we're justifying it by the low cost and by the convenience on the speed factor in which it's served. And so it's easy to fall into that trap. And it takes a tremendous amount of discipline to avoid that, to force yourself to slow down in your activities you do each day, keeping in mind that you're going to need enough energy and enough time to come back to a hostel. And when you're searching in the hostels or Airbnb or whatever it is, finding kitchen facilities that are adequately equipped for you to be able to cook, and then just forcing yourself through sheer discipline to go back and cook healthy meals. So that's a second challenge. Third challenge is similar to the second, and that is exercise. Exercise, we get a lot of exercise naturally as you are traveling the world through walking. 2, 3, 4, 5 hours a day is a normal type thing as you're doing long-term travel from city to city, because you're walking to see all of these sites. But if you're trying to build muscle with micro tears, that requires lifting some sort of strenuous weights, or doing lunges or squats, stairs, something along these lines to create the micro tears in the muscle to actually build the muscle. So there's a little bit of difference between cardiovascular activities, say jogging, running, and actually trying to build muscle. So it takes a tremendous amount of discipline, particularly if you're in a hostel situation where you're in a dormitory, the beds are crowded together, there's no real space on the floor, people are sleeping all day in the mornings or in the afternoons because they were partying, or they arrive late, or they come late, or whatever. It's very difficult to force yourself to exercise. Going out and running in many instances is probably the best option, but in some cities it's not really feasible. For instance, you may be in Hong Kong and it's just too crowded, too many people. Downtown New York City, it just may be too crowded to take into that kind of activity. So you have to rely a lot on hiking and walking, and then just be very, very careful with your diet. And that's my suggestion on how to address the exercise issue. I'm still struggling with all three of these in finding better ways to overcome them. I constantly read other blogs, travel blogs from other travelers, and watch a lot of other travel vlogs to try to get ideas of how to conquer these three items. If you have some thoughts or suggestions or something along those lines, please write in the comments, because these are things I personally struggle with and see as the biggest three challenges, and I've tried to explain my solutions, but I'd love to hear what you have to say.